let's assume we go running back, and now you're early third round, and it's a 304, and Allen Robinson is sitting there. Are you pulling the trigger with Robinson as your wide receiver one? Do you feel comfortable with Allen Robinson as your wide receiver one in 2020?
If Allen Robinson is my wide receiver one, it's like you said, it's because I went running back in the first 2 rounds, and I'm loaded with 2 stud running backs, and Robinson has proven to me that he can be a wide receiver one in the NFL. So to me, Robinson's a guy who is a safer option, and if I'm taking 2 elite running backs, I don't mind a super steady and safe wide receiver one in Robinson because he lacks some of that upside just because of the offense. But I think his floor is actually super high, even on this Bears team that seems a little bit volatile. I look at last season and he finished as the wide receiver 8 in that tragic offense with Mitch Trubisky and the Bears falling apart. He finished as wide receiver 8 in that offense. And that offense last season was 29th in yards per game and 29th in points per game. That was behind the Dolphins in both categories. This offense was absolutely brutal in 2019, and he still was a top 8 guy. So looking forward to this season, they bring in Nick Foles, and I don't necessarily think Nick Foles is a huge upgrade from Mitch Trubisky, but I think between the 2 quarterbacks, they're going to find better value than they had last season. If Trubisky starts out hot, maybe there's a fire lit under him by Foles. He's going to probably play a little bit better. And instead of, taking Trubisky out and going with Chase Daniel, they have Nick Foles, who hopefully can come in and be effective if Trubisky is struggling. So they kind of have more options there in the quarterback room, which is only going to help. And I look at Robinson, it's just a volume play, right? Like he's going to get 140 to 150 targets this season. He was 3rd in the NFL in targets last season, so the volume's going to be there. Anthony Miller's there, but they don't really throw the ball a ton to anybody else, maybe Cohen out of the backfield. But really the other thing with Allen Robinson is that he's going to score touchdowns. He had 7 last season, and he had a 30% target share in the red zone. So when they get down in the scoring zone, they're looking to Allen Robinson to score touchdowns for this team. He was 2nd in target share in the red zone last season in the entire NFL. So I think they're going to get down in that scoring zone, and they're going to look to him early and often. And if the offense is better this season, there should be many more opportunities for him down in that range this season. So, Steph, are you with me? Like, I know I have Allen Robinson in our dynasty, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but if you go running back, is there anything that's scaring you away from A-Rob?
No, not at all. Not at all. He's a proven alpha wide receiver one in the league. Any team he's been on, he's pretty much guaranteed to get the most targets. Even when he misses 3 or 4 games, like there was that one season, I think it was either his first season with the Bears, I believe it was, maybe his second to last season with Jacksonville before he missed pretty much an entire season. He didn't even play a full 16 games and still led the team in targets by a significant margin. So if he's out there, he's going to dominate. I love Allen Robinson. I think he's perennially slept on from a talent, like general NFL perspective.
Absolutely.
I think fantasy players are on board with A-Rob. But the thing I like about Nick Foles coming in is that, okay, let's say Trubisky plays better. That's a win for Allen Robinson. If Trubisky crumbles and Foles just comes in, I think Nick Foles is completely washed. But if he comes in,
he's not great.
If he comes in and he's just okay, what that's really doing is now you get even a higher floor for Allen Robinson. So it's like if the wheels come off, well, then we'll put Nick Foles in there. And even if Nick Foles is just playing decent, that's completely fine. That's better than a situation where Mitchell Trubisky is throwing 17 touchdowns and 10 interceptions like he did last year. So I love A-Rob. If he's there in the third and I have 2 bell cow running backs like a Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, or an Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley, I'm gladly pulling the trigger on Robinson as my one. No question.
This is something that's kind of tough to like pull the trigger on draft day though, because even when we're running mocks, it's hard for me to pick a name like Allen Robinson over, the Amari Coopers, the Kenny Galladays, the Mike Evans of the world. Just
Really?
Because Allen Robinson isn't as sexy of a name, and I have him ranked way higher than those guys. Allen Robinson is my wide receiver 6, so I believe he's going to get it done. It's just really tough because you want upside in fantasy, but I don't think Robinson is a guy who can finish as the wide receiver 1. But I think his floor is just incredibly high. And even though some of those other names are on the board, it's like it doesn't feel good. But when you're starting to put up solid weeks with him week in and week out and you're just crushing teams, people are going to, look back and be like, dang, Allen Robinson was the right pick there in the 3rd round. So,
Yep, early third.
it's tough to stare at. I'm glad we're asking this question because it's been tough for me in mocks, even though I am high on him in my rankings, to stare him down and feel good about him as my wide receiver one. But the facts line up. My rankings line up. The facts line up. He's safe. And you can't really talk about Allen Robinson without talking about the fact that he can produce with bad quarterbacks. Like the 2015 season with Blake Bortles, I know it was a lifetime ago, but he had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns
Unreal.
with Blake Bortles as his quarterback.
Unreal.
He's still only going to be 27 this season. So, Allen Robinson can get it done. I know his yards per catch was a little bit lower last year, but back in that huge season with Blake Bortles, his yards per catch was 4 or 5 yards higher. So he's an explosive player. He can get it done. He feels incredibly safe at that wide receiver one spot.